Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you a surprising story that will move you. Let's meet Safira Lockwood, a staunch skeptic and project coordinator who, after surviving a catastrophic plane crash, had a near-death experience that changed her life forever. She encountered angelic presences, received prophetic visions about December, and returned with a powerful message about love and the future of humanity. What the angels revealed will leave you speechless. So, before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any incredible content like this. Now, get ready for an exciting and transformative journey. My name is Safira Lockwood, and for 32 years, I have believed that life is exactly what you make of it. Effort generated results, control brought security, and logic, well, logic was the only reliable compass. I'm a project coordinator at one of Seattle's most renowned technology companies. Or at least it was. My life was as organized as my digital calendar, where every hour had a purpose and every goal a deadline. If you had asked me a few months ago what I thought about spirituality, miracles, or prophecies, I would have laughed. Really laughed. These things, I said, were for those who needed comfort in the face of uncertainty. I preferred to deal with the facts. But life has a peculiar way of dismantling our certainties, doesn't it? Sometimes the universe just takes over. That's what happened to me on an ordinary September afternoon. A routine flight, a catastrophic accident, and an experience that changed absolutely everything. Now, I'm here to tell you what happened. Not just the details of the accident, but what I experienced beyond it. I'm here to share something so real and transformative that, even now, words seem insufficient. Before I continue, I want to make something clear. This is not just a survival story. It's a story about love, purpose, and what truly connects us to something greater. I don't expect you to believe me right away. I know many will hear what I'm about to say and look for scientific or logical explanations. I already did the same. But please give me the chance to tell you. Just listen. I'll start from the beginning, from the life I thought I knew before everything changed. Because to understand what happened to me, you need to know who I was and who I became. So, take a deep breath and come with me. This is the story of an inveterate skeptic. A woman who found faith not because she sought it, but because she found it, at the most unlikely time possible. That day started like any other. My alarm clock rang at 5:30 in the morning. I had prepared my suitcase the night before, an almost automatic routine before business trips. My flight to Denver was scheduled for 8 Mo. It was a business trip, one of many. I was going to present a progress report for a strategic partnership. Nothing too exciting, but important enough to justify rushing. Upon arriving at the airport, everything seemed normal. The usual movement of passengers dragging suitcases, announcements on loudspeakers, and the smell of expensive coffee in the corridors. I boarded the plane carrying my tablet, ready to review my presentation. The idea of relaxing was as remote as the possibility of a technical failure on a modern plane, or so I believed. As soon as the aircraft took off, I dove into work. I didn't even realize the flight was more turbulent than usual, until a stronger jolt drew gasps and murmurs from the passengers around me. I looked out the window. The sky was filled with dense, gray clouds, so low that it seemed possible to touch them. It was then that everything fell apart. A muffled explosion echoed through the plane, followed by a violent jolt. The oxygen masks fell from the ceiling, and the flight attendants began shouting instructions that no one could hear. My heart raced, but my mind was in denial. This can't be happening, I thought. Not with me. The plane lost altitude so quickly that the pressure on my chest was unbearable. The screams of passengers echoed like a symphony of despair. "We're falling," someone shouted, their voice sharp. I couldn't move my arms, as if panic had paralyzed me. The pilot tried to speak over the loudspeaker, but his words were swallowed up by the chaos. All I heard was, "Emergency, imminent impact." I closed my eyes, pressing my hands against the back of the seat in front of me. There was nothing he could do. All that was left was to wait. The impact was overwhelming. A deafening sound of ripping metal, followed by a crushing force, and then silence. Just a dark void, as if the world had been turned off. I was sure he had died. When I opened my eyes, or what I thought were my eyes, the scenery around me was disconcerting. I was floating above a scene of absolute devastation. Far below, I saw the plane torn apart, pieces scattered among trees and a muddy field. There was fire, smoke, and distant, muffled sounds. as if I were hearing everything underwater. That's when I saw myself. My body was motionless, trapped between debris, with bloodstains on my face and chest. For a moment I thought, this is a dream. It can only be a dream, but it felt so real. The feeling was strangely calm, almost comforting. The chaos around me didn't seem to affect me. I felt no fear, pain, or despair. It was as if I was watching a movie. And interestingly, I didn't care what I was seeing. Everything seemed insignificant. Suddenly, I felt a gentle force pulling me up. The vision of the accident began to fade away, as if I were being sucked into an invisible tunnel. The light around me became brighter, but not blinding. She was warm, welcoming, like a mother's hug I never knew I needed. Around me, I noticed presences. They were not human forms, but figures composed of light, pulsing as if made of living energy. It was impossible to describe them in physical terms, but I knew they were conscious, full of love and wisdom. I didn't hear words, but I felt clear messages, as if they were placed directly into my heart. One read, "You are not alone. Never was." I was enveloped by a feeling of deep understanding. All the hurt, anxieties, and doubts I carried seemed to dissolve at that moment. I knew I was in a place that transcends any human definition, a space where only truth existed. The presences began to show me visions. I saw moments of my life, good and bad, pass by like scenes from a movie, but with one difference. I felt the emotions of the people I impacted. I understood how my words and actions, no matter how small, created ripples that affected other lives. Then something different came, a vision of the future. I saw the month of December, where a spiritual rapture took place. Natural disasters and global changes transformed the planet, but in the midst of the chaos, a new era of love and compassion emerged. "You have a choice," said those present. "Stay or go back." I hesitated. The peace in that place was indescribable, but something or someone inside me knew I needed to go back. Returning to my body was like falling off a cliff, abrupt, heavy, and painful. The feeling of peace and lightness he had experienced was replaced by a crushing heaviness. My chest hurt, and my head throbbed as if it were being squeezed in a vice. I heard voices around me, but they were distant and confusing, as if someone was speaking in another room. I slowly opened my eyes and was greeted by flashing lights, tense faces, and piercing sounds. Sirens, quick footsteps, hurried orders. He was on a stretcher, being transported by paramedics. My body felt strange, like it didn't belong to me. "She's awake!" a male voice exclaimed. It was Ethan Grayson, the paramedic who would later become my confidant. He looked at me with a mix of relief and disbelief, holding my hand as if to make sure I stayed there. "You're safe now," he said, trying to reassure me. But I didn't feel safe, not physically at least. What I had experienced was so real, so intense, that the physical world seemed fake in comparison. I arrived at the hospital in a daze, surrounded by doctors and nurses who didn't seem to believe I was alive. They murmured words like miracle and impossible as they checked my vitals. "Your injuries are minor considering what you've been through," said the head physician, Dr. Callahan, as he looked over my chart. "You are incredibly lucky," but I knew it wasn't luck. There was something bigger at stake. I wasn't alive by chance. I was alive because something, or someone, had a purpose for me. That night, as I lay in the hospital bed, with the lights dim and the distant sound of heart monitors, I began to cry. It wasn't a cry of pain or fear, but of an emotion I couldn't describe. The memory of light, angelic presences, and visions of December washed over me. I knew this wasn't a hallucination. I looked up at the ceiling, feeling an emptiness where there was once peace. I whispered into the silence, "Why me? What do you want me to do?" Silence did not respond, but inside me, I felt a single word echo: wait. The first few days after leaving the hospital were the most confusing of my life. My mind was in constant turmoil. Memories of the accident and, even more so, the near-death experience haunted me in vivid flashes. It was as if part of me was still in that place of light, while another was trapped in this chaotic and confusing world. My family tried to support me, but they didn't know how to deal with what I was going through. My mother, a practical and loving woman, told me, "Safira, dear, you need to rest. Leave all that behind. You survived, and that's what matters." But I couldn't. The feeling that there was something I needed to do, something bigger than myself, wouldn't leave me alone. I sought help from a professional, Dr. Lila Montero, a psychiatrist recommended by the hospital. She was an intelligent and empathetic woman, but also skeptical. After our first session, where I tried to describe my experience, she smiled gently and said, "What you experienced is common in traumatic situations. Safira, the brain sometimes creates these narratives to protect us from pain." I wanted to believe she was right, but I knew she wasn't. It was not a narrative created by the brain. It was something deeper, something I felt in every cell of my being. Despite this, I continued the sessions, partly because I needed someone to listen, but also because I wanted to prove to myself and maybe her that what I experienced was real. Between appointments, the routine seemed like a cruel joke. Trying to get back to work was futile. I would sit in front of the computer, staring at spreadsheets and emails, feeling like I was wasting my time and energy on meaningless things. One night I received an unexpected call. It was Ethan Grayson, the paramedic who rescued me. He had found my number in the accident report. "I don't know why I'm calling," he said, with a hesitation that seemed out of place for someone so confident. "But something told me you needed help." Talking to Ethan was like an anchor. He listened to my story without interrupting, without judging. When I finished, he said something I've never forgotten. "I don't understand what you experienced, but I believe it was real. And if it's that important, maybe you need to find a way to share it." It was the first time I considered that my story was not just mine. Ethan's call was a turning point. For the first time, someone heard my story without dismissing it as delusion or exaggeration. He encouraged me to take a step I had been dreading, sharing my experience. But how? For whom? "You don't have to start with a huge audience," he said. "Tell one person, then another. You will find those who need to listen." I hesitantly followed his advice, starting with those close to me. One day, while having lunch with my best friend Clara, I decided to tell her what happened. I waited for the right moment and said, "Do you remember the accident? I think there's something you need to know." Clara put down her fork and looked at me carefully. I told everything: the light, the presences, the visions of December. His expression alternated between surprise, curiosity, and disbelief. When I finished, she was silent for a moment and then said, "Safira, this is intense. I don't know what to think, but it seems like you really believe it. That's what matters." Clara's reaction gave me courage. I started sharing my story in small circles. Friends, close work colleagues, even Dr. Lila Montero, who continued to follow me. She listened again, this time without interrupting me, and at the end she said something unexpected. "Safira, I still don't know if I believe it, but I can see that this has changed you. Maybe it's time to see where this takes her." And so I started looking for ways to expand my voice. Ethan connected me with a group of survivors of accidents and near-death experiences. There, for the first time, I felt understood. Each person had their own extraordinary story, but there was a common theme. Something beyond human understanding had touched their lives. I was invited to share my story at a small group meeting. That night, as I spoke to about 20 people in a church hall, something changed inside me. The words came out fluidly, as if they were being dictated directly from the heart. I looked at the faces around me and saw something I had never noticed before: hope. After the meeting, an older woman approached me. His eyes were teary. "Thank you for sharing this," she said. "I needed to hear that love is what connects us." I was forgetting that. That's when I realized Ethan was right. My experience was not just mine. It was a gift to share, a message to spread. As I continued sharing my story, the sense of purpose became clearer and clearer. It wasn't just about what I experienced, but what people could learn from it. The message that the angels gave me, about love, the connection between souls, and the events that were approaching in December, needed to reach as many people as possible. It was Ethan who suggested I blog about my experiences. "People today look to the internet for answers," he said. "You can reach a lot more people than you realize." I hesitated, fearing I would be ridiculed or ignored, but I knew he was right. I decided to start slowly. In the first post, I briefly told you about the accident and how I survived. I haven't gone into the spiritual details, not yet. I just shared the emotional impact of facing death up close and how it changed my perspective. To my surprise, the post started to gain attention. Comments began to appear, most of them supportive. "Your courage inspires me," wrote a woman named Emily. "I also survived something terrible, but I never got to talk about it. It was the encouragement I needed." Over time, I began to talk about light, angelic presences, and finally visions about December. I knew I was entering controversial territory, but I felt it was my obligation. One night, while reviewing a text for the blog, I received another unexpected call, this time from Dr. Lila Montero. She had followed my progress silently, but something seemed different in her voice. "Safira," she began, hesitantly, "I read your blog. I have to confess, I'm skeptical by nature, but something in what you write made me think. Perhaps there is more to this world than we can explain." That moment was more meaningful than I could express. Someone who had started out as a critic now saw value in my words. With Ethan's support and the audience's encouraging responses, I realized I needed to do more. I accepted invitations for larger speaking engagements and was eventually asked to appear on radio shows and podcasts. With each new space, the message expanded. Love is the force that connects everything, and December will be the turning point for humanity. Criticism was inevitable, but that didn't bother me. "My mission is not to convince," I said, "but to plant seeds. The rest is not up to me." As the message gained reach, the mission seemed to grow organically. People who heard my story at talks or read my blog began to share their own experiences. Many reported something in common, a feeling of urgency, as if something big was about to happen. I received messages from all corners of the country, and, eventually, from other parts of the world. Some told me about recurring dreams involving lights in the sky or cataclysmic events. Others asked me how they could prepare for the changes I had mentioned. "I'm not a prophet," I told those who asked, "but I believe that what the angels showed me has to do with living with love and compassion. That's what prepares us, no matter what comes." My story started to attract attention from larger outlets. One day, I received an invitation from a popular spiritual podcast called Beyond Life. It was the biggest platform I had faced so far, with thousands of weekly listeners. I felt butterflies in my stomach, but I knew I needed to take advantage of the opportunity. On the day of recording, I sat at the microphone in a small studio in Seattle. The host, a man named Michael Cade, was warm and welcoming. He started with simple questions about the accident and near-death experience, but soon delved into deeper territory. "You mentioned visions of a global event in December," he said. "Can you tell us more about that?" I took a deep breath before responding. What I saw was a moment of change, both destructive and transformative. There will be challenges, yes, but also an opportunity for humanity to awaken. Love and compassion will be the only forces that will guide us through this. The messages started coming in almost immediately after the episode aired. Some were encouraging. "You gave me hope to face the future." Others, more critical. "This is pure sensationalism. Where is the evidence?" Among the answers, one caught my attention. It was from a woman named Meredith, who said she had a similar vision while in a coma. "You are not alone," she wrote. "What you saw in December is real. We need to spread this message before it's too late." Meredith and I connected, and her experience corroborated the messages I had received. With his help, I started organizing meetings to bring together people who felt this same urgency. With each new step, I felt like my mission was aligning with the purpose the angels had shown me. But time was running out, and December was quickly approaching. As December approached, the meetings I organized began to attract more people. Small groups turned into packed auditoriums, and the stories that were shared at these events impacted me as much as, apparently, mine impacted others. A woman named Elena, who drove 4 hours to attend a meeting, held my hands tightly after my talk. His eyes were teary. "I experienced something similar," she said. "6 months ago, I had a near-death experience during surgery. I saw the light, I heard the voices. I didn't know what to make of it, but listening to you today, now it makes sense. Thanks." Another man, a former military man named Ray, told how my message helped him overcome his disbelief. He had lost faith in everything after years of war trauma, but something in my words touched him. "I don't know how, but you lit something inside," he said, pointing to his chest. These interactions confirmed that what I was doing had a greater purpose. It wasn't about me. It was about awakening something in people, a connection to what they already knew but had forgotten. Reactions, however, were not always positive. At one of the events, a man stood up in the middle of my speech and interrupted. "This is ridiculous. You are selling false hope. Where is your evidence? I took a deep breath before responding. I'm not here to prove anything, he said calmly. My mission is not to convince anyone, but to share what I experienced. You have every right to doubt, and I respect that. After the event, I found the same man waiting outside. He looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, he said, "My wife brought me here. She believes, but I can't. Sorry about what happened in there." I smiled and replied, "Don't apologize. Questioning is part of the process. Just allow yourself to listen. The rest, let time show." These moments, those of acceptance and those of resistance, shaped my journey. The more people I met, the more I understood that my mission was less about answers and more about opening space for reflection. The angels' messages about love, compassion, and connection were beginning to resonate in hearts around the world. But with December just around the corner, the weight of what was to come became increasingly real. As December approached, the weight of what was to come seemed to hang in the air. The meetings and lectures continued, but now there was a more intense, almost palpable sense of urgency. More and more people shared with me dreams, visions, or premonitions about impending changes. It was as if an invisible current connected those who were awakening to something greater. One such story came from a woman named Meredith, who had become a close friend since we connected through the blog. She told me about a vision she had while in a coma, something that echoed what I had seen in my near-death experience. "I saw the sky open," she said during a meeting we organized. "It was like a portal, and there was such a bright light that everything around it seemed insignificant. And I heard a clear message: prepare for the new beginning." Those words stuck with me, reverberating as I prepared for my biggest event yet, a conference in Portland, organized by an emerging spirituality network. There were over 500 people in the auditorium, and I knew this was my opportunity to reach as many people as possible before December ran its course. On stage, I looked at the crowd and took a deep breath. "What I'm about to share isn't just my story," I began. "It's a message for all of us. It doesn't matter what you believe or don't believe. Love is the force that connects everything. It is what unites us and sustains us, and that's what will guide us through what's to come." As I spoke, images of light, angelic presences, and visions of December flooded my mind. I knew the changes would be profound: natural catastrophes, social collapses, but also a global spiritual awakening. At the end of the lecture, the auditorium was completely silent. No one seemed to want to be the first to applaud, as if they were afraid to break the energy that was in the air. It was only when a woman in the front row started clapping that the sound filled the space, growing in intensity until everyone was on their feet. When I got off the stage, Ethan was waiting for me. He hugged me and said, "You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing." The following weeks were marked by a wave of new contacts, messages, and even invitations to speak at international events. But more important than that, I knew I was planting seeds in hearts around the world. What December would bring was still uncertain. I didn't know if I would be a witness to the events or if the impact would be gradual. But one thing was clear: my mission was to prepare people, not with fear, but with love and compassion. Because, in the end, the greatest purpose of life is exactly this: to love. And if what comes is a new beginning, love will be the foundation on which everything will be rebuilt. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.